Hi, my name's Craig Biscyer, and I wanted to record a short thing for the Blame Heath Challenge. Something Heath mentioned in his video asking for people's stories, which is very similar to one of the ones I have. Basically, a number of years ago, when we were working on my model railroad layout for the Housatonic Railroad, uh, we have a very large scene that's at the bottom of the end of the railroad in an area called Wilson Point. And it was a very large water scene that was going to require a ton of Envirotex, the epoxy, to do the water. And we had planned a huge thing. I had a very large group of people over to help, probably about 10 people. And we had people running around and they were damming up everything around all the corners to make sure nothing spilled out. People who were in charge of actually working on the mixing, the epoxy, and other people who were going to be there to help spread it. So everybody had their jobs, and one of my friends, who will remain nameless for the purposes of this, insisted that he really wanted to help with the mixing and everything because he had some ideas that he'd gotten from Dave Frary, of all people, and said he knew exactly what to do and he'd be able to mix it really, really well. I said, okay, great. So I gave him the tools that I had, which was a bucket and a mixing paddle and an electric drill. And I said, okay, here, take this, just go slow and everything should work out fine. And I didn't think about it again because he had it under control. So got everything ready. People were good. We dusted off the whole water area and people were ready with their spatulas and sticks to get everything going. And I could hear in the background that my friend is using the drill, and I wasn't really thinking about it much because I trusted him. And he said he knew what he was doing. He talked to Dave Frere and he said, I know exactly what to do. I'm like, great. Comes the time for it to come over. And my friend says, we're ready. I said, okay, great. Everybody, let's get ready. We're doing it. So he comes over and he takes the bucket and he dips it over, and all this foam just comes spilling out of the bucket. And I'm just like, what is going on? It's not supposed to look like that. And everybody's like looking around like, uh-oh. And they start taking their spatulas and they're spreading out all this foam. And it's like, it's almost like they're thrusting a huge cake. It was just horrifying. And so I went to my friend, what happened? And he's like, I talked to Frary and he said, you can't mix it too much. I'm like, I think you mixed it too much. And he's like, and at that point, I couldn't pay attention to him anymore because I had this big mess of basically meringue all over the water surface. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, there's over 1,000 pilings that have already been planted. And all the guys are trying to get in around all the different pilings and spread it all out. And it looks like a giant cake. And I'm like, this is a disaster. I'm going to have to scrape this off and I'm going to have to repaint it and put new pilings in. It's going to take months. And then he comes over and he goes, I got the next batch. And he pulls it over and it's even more meringue. And I'm like, oh no, it's ruined. It's ruined. And I said, stop. He's like, look, I talked to Frary. He said you can't mix it too much. I'm like, I don't think he had in mind that you were going to use an electric drill. I think he probably thinking you were going to use a spoon. Anyway, so people are starting to get kind of upset, and so am I, obviously. And we, it's starting to set up a little bit, and we're like, this is a disaster. And then I remembered that in the instructions for the Envirotex, it said that in order to remove bubbles, you're supposed to play heat over it, like a blowtorch. And I'm like, I've got a blowtorch. I know where it is. And I went and found it, and it was in the corner of the basement where I keep my plumbing supplies, and I got it out. I quickly put it all together, and I ran over. I said, who's got a match? Nobody smoked. I was like, so I had to run back, and I found that I had one of those little things you squeeze, and it makes a spark. So we're sitting there. I got the thing going, and I'm going, and finally, and the fire's coming out. I'm like, okay. I start going like this over the entire area where all the stuff I got, and all the foam just goes boom like that, and it goes clear, and it's like it hit it everywhere. So I'm doing like this. I feel like I'm a firebug. I'm like the pilings are getting singed, but all the foam is starting to go down and it's becoming liquid and clear again, and I'm like, thank God. And we finally managed to get it all down, and there was only one spot right in the very front, of course, because that's where it would happen, where it started to actually set up a little bit. And if you look at it even today, you can still see that it's a little bit of really, really fine bubbles in the surface. But we did manage to pull it out of the hat. It ended up actually coming out really well. And but that was definitely my oh my God moment when things went kind of crazy. So blame Heath. Um, anyway, I hope you enjoy the story, and take care.